Welcome, travelling friends of Australia. We are Vellam and Annika, and we hope you enjoy this episode of our podcast,
where we have a chat to other travellers and give them the opportunity to tell their stories and share the tips that they've learned along the way.
So today is actually really exciting. We're chatting to our first individual on an interview or on our podcast. He's got some exciting stories, and his name is Andrew Riis. Let's have a chat to Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Much better than a week ago when I was just pulled over on the.
That's okay.
I get to use my my proper microphone as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're the first people we interview with a proper mic.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we finally got to connect. I mean, I think I remember I don't know if I saw your Instagram ad or what happened. And then I filled in your form, and I was like, yeah, what the heck, fill in the form. And then you texted me a month later. I was like, oh, I remember these.
Yeah, I emailed back, but I don't know if you didn't get it. Maybe it went to spam.
I don't know. I think that was a period of time when I was not checking emails at all.
Yeah.
Because I was just on the road and so immersed with being on the road that anything in normal life that I didn't have to touch, I would kind of just touch,
Cool.
That's great.
I love already we're just having a chat, but it's already about your travels and stuff. So I don't know if you've heard the other podcast, but we just have a casual chat.
Okay.
We were meeting each other on the road, kind of like your podcast, we're strangers and just having a chat and becoming friends really. So our first question is usually do you want to tell us more about Andrew? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Canada. On a massive farm when I was younger, which was amazing. And then when I was 12, my family moved to Australia for a 1-year adventure. And 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 4. And now it's been almost 11 years being here. And yeah, I actually, it's funny that I'm, traveling around now and I say hi to random people or even just DM'd you guys on Instagram and filled out the form because that's rare for me. I grew up really, really shy. Mom tells stories of when I was younger and someone would knock on the door. I would literally just hide under her dress or hide in the next room. That way I didn't have to see these people. And when I finished high school in 2015, I guess I kind of went on a journey of working out who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. And one day I challenged myself. I was in Sydney to say hi to every single person I walked past and say good morning to them. And I did that. And I was surprised because a lot of people were either very dismissive of it or pissed off. Why are you saying good morning to me? And I was really confused because I was like, man, we live in this culture where why wouldn't we be friendly? What's the downside of being friendly? And when I started to break out of my bubble, I kind of realized how many people are just living their own kind of insular, individualistic lives. And also how much fun comes from moments of just interacting with random people. And so I did a whole bunch of random stuff from there. I used to do these challenges with my friend Jordan where we'd go out to a place and sing in public, even though we had horrible voices, or just interact with people in random ways. Did it with some friends at the start of this year. Right after the bushfires, we just went out. I think we went out near the Opera House, and we just started speaking to people about how they were feeling about the bushfires. And I love connecting with people, whatever it's about. I just think it's so beautiful to share those moments with random people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
awesome. It's very powerful connecting with people in that way. I remember while I was in London traveling there, and I was homeless. Actually, I've been homeless for 2 months. And the people I just met in the park, and made good friends, and they invited me to their house, and we had a few drinks, and random people. It's so great.
Yeah. That's spontaneous, just meet up. Yeah.
If they came over to to talk to me,
and just said hi,
I would have just had a normal night where I just stay awake still and watching out for the ranger and stuff to not kick me out of the park. But I had a good night. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think for me it's a lot about realizing that opportunity to have those deeper connections or to hang out with people or to I ended up on all sorts of crazy adventures that I wouldn't have been on if it wasn't for random people I met in the most random ways, you know, and just knowing or always being aware of the fact that if I want to, like I really feel like it's possible to connect with anybody. And that doesn't mean that I always want to, because some of the time in a van, people always come up to you and say hi and you just want to sleep. But knowing that like always, like on the other side of hello, like you never know what opportunities are going to come past and what you can make happen. Like for me, that's just such a beautiful thing and a beautiful way to go about life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, for me, traveling around, or that's a big part of why it was so fun, because you have a much smaller space, like kind of like public parks and beaches and campgrounds, they become your backyard and your living room, right? And just like all the rooms in your house that you don't have. And so because of that, you're living a much more public life. And as long as you are outgoing, at least to some degree, I feel like it creates an opportunity for all sorts of random moments to happen that wouldn't happen if you just cooped up in your house, you know, watching Netflix or just chilling on the couch.
You got to ask those people, what are you doing in my backyard? Or, you know, so you're living there with you, so really.
Sometimes people become quite like territorial, but I always found it fun just trying to bend the rules the tiniest bit. Like when I went through Airlie Beach, there was this little patch of grass that was apparently someone's property, but the person whose property it was didn't care that people in vans would park on there. And Airlie Beach was like one of the strictest places I went to. I remember I was just folding my clothes after going to the laundry, parked up in a random car park spot, and a ranger came up to me and was like, hey, you need to move along here. Like, you need to park in that other car park down here. We want to reserve this car park for people that are going to the restaurants. And I'm like, that's totally not how it worked. But yeah, so I ended up at this basically patch of grass right by the water. And the nearest free camp was about 45 minutes away, and the campgrounds were all pretty expensive. And the rangers came by in the morning and they said, hey, this is private property. You're not supposed to be here. But they literally can't do anything because it's private property. And it happened for months and months, and the owner just didn't care. So I love just kind of just finding ways to make stuff like that
There's
happen.
always a loophole.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there is. Well, Queensland was, I decided, I bought my van, which was like a spur of the moment thing. I just wanted to leave home and kind of wasn't in the best home environment. And then I was like, all right. And Queensland had just reopened their borders. And I decided, all right, I'm going to go up from Sydney all the way into Queensland. But only when I got really close to Queensland did I Google the rules for sleeping in vehicles in Queensland. And I realized that Queensland's actually overall one of the strictest places in Australia, because sleeping in your vehicle is by default illegal in Queensland. Whereas in New South Wales and a bunch of other states, the default is that it's legal to sleep in your vehicle unless councils have bylaws. So then I was like, oh shoot. But then I kind of got used to, you know, stealth camping and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but if it's a camper, even though it's a camper, you still
like I'm talking about not going to caravan parks. I'm talking about
just
pulling into like a lake or a beach or the side of the road. Yeah, no, I mean you can definitely go to caravan parks and pay, but like I said, I wanted to do it as cheap as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we had another couple. They do a lot of stealth camping as well, so they just try and, you know, go next to the road on the beach.
Get in when it's dark and then leave when it gets light.
And I think with a van, like with like a, you know, like the vehicle part of your, not the caravan, a van, it could probably be easier. Whereas when it's a car and a caravan,
it looks too big and suspicious that it's not supposed to be there.
Yes. Yeah, although I did meet an elderly couple that used to not pay for campsites, and they had a massive caravan. And whenever they would just pull over on the side of the road, and whenever they got in trouble, the man would just pretend that his wife was sick and she didn't have the energy for them to keep carrying on. But so I mean, there's ways of doing it. People
bad, but it's brilliant.
To get creative, yeah.
Well, if you're not really doing any damage, you know, you're not someone who parties every night where you are in the street, then I guess it's okay. You just move on. When they come and tell you off, you just move on.
Yeah. So you already said that you sort of just randomly started traveling and you know, decided to go and stuff. But where did the Hello Stranger come in?
Yeah, so I went to, before COVID, so January this year, I went to a dinner party with 40 complete strangers. And I loved it so much, and I decided that I wanted to start a project where I just spoke with random people. And so I did the guy that hosted the dinner party, and then I just DM'd strangers on Instagram, basically because COVID happened and it was all virtual. And I think I recorded about 15 conversations. And then I was like, what is this going to become? And I was kind of brainstorming ideas, and I was like, all right. And my sister suggested the name Hello Stranger, and I liked it because it was just about saying hi to random people.
Yeah.
And so then I launched my podcast, and I got these shirts, which was so perfect because I wasn't planning on going on the road, and Hello Stranger kind of just started off as a podcast. But then when I ended up on the road, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so perfect because I'm literally wearing shirts that say Hello Stranger, and I'd be, my van has a wooden deck on top, and so I'd be sitting on top of the deck eating breakfast, and then people would come and say hi, and I was like, this is so perfect for everything my podcast was about, which is this idea of like the depth in everybody when we take the time to listen and connect, and also just how much more fulfilling and fun life gets when we're friendly and open-minded. And so I kind of went from being a podcast to just kind of a random movement that was basically on my Instagram stories, where I would just go around and I'd rock up to places and I'd just walk around and say hi to people. And yeah, I really love the idea of being that little bit more open-minded and that little bit more friendly, and just seeing what experiences kind of occur off the back of that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the name, like Hello Stranger. Like it's just perfect. Like it's it's simple, but it like works. It's also
it's like it conveys the name and the vision in 2 words, which I like. It's funny though, some days I remember I was around Harvey Bay and I'd just done some groceries, and some random person came and said hi to me, and I was really tired that day and I was confused. I was like, why is she saying hi to me? And then I realized that I was wearing my Hello Stranger shirt. So I basically wore this shirt kind of almost every single day, except on days when I just kind of wanted to do my own thing. Then I would deliberately not wear it.
Then you don't want to be the celebrity, like it's just like
it only just shows to you yourself as well. Then when people come up to you, how you act different, like, and that's, I guess that's the reaction you get normally when you just say hello to strangers. Like, what do you want? Like, what's your deal here?
Yeah, it's unfortunately the world that we live in that it's become such a like you just do your own thing.
But it's good to have emotion like what you're doing now is to change that stigma.
Yeah,
open people up a
bit more. I've like realized if you just smile at someone, like it.
Yeah.
Totally. Go like this, and then they go. Like, the awkward like smile.
But it changes their whole day.
Yeah, it does. Like I've seen when people have smiled at me before and I've had like a bad moment, it just changes my mood straight away. So yeah,
totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like everyone wants that deep down, but people just don't. It's not the norm. And so it's kind of, it doesn't kind of fit in with how people normally interact.
Everyone's in their little safe zones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I guess I chose to travel by myself, was by being a solo traveler. Kind of, I couldn't imagine just being like really shy and closed off and traveling around Australia for a while. Like I can imagine it would be a pretty depressing experience. So by being by myself and being outgoing, it kind of just forced me to meet people everywhere I went.
So are you home now?
I am, yes.
Are you gonna go travel again soon?
Probably, yeah. And I've kind of gone from full time to, I guess, like weekend trips and trips every couple of days. So I've been all around Sydney. I've been down to Kangaroo Valley and Newcastle and Wollongong a couple of times in the last couple of weeks alone. So for me, like travel is kind of, van life is something I'm probably going to do full time again in the near future. Like I loved it. I loved being able to go anywhere and park up anywhere and just say hi to all sorts of random people. So yeah, I don't think it'll ever be something that I stop. I think I might do it in different ways. Like my van was tiny. I couldn't even, it has a couch that turns into a bed. It was owned by a Japanese couple that built it, but I couldn't even sit on the couch. Like my head would hit the top. So if I was eating, I would like duck my head down. And so it was very small. So I think I'd want something at least a little bit bigger. It wasn't even in vans. You have short and long wheelbase, and long wheelbase gives you like an extra meter. Mine was a short wheelbase.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit small if I had to, I could definitely live in it for another couple of months, but I'm definitely picturing saving and upgrading to something just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So why did you start or how were you able to go at the start of the year? Did you save up and like didn't have work, or tell us about how you were able to do it.
Yeah, I literally had like no money left when I decided to get my van. So I've been on a temporary visa up until recently, which has really impacted my kind of income earning abilities. And I launched my podcast, and for my podcast launch, this was in between waves of COVID when there were very few restrictions. And so I rented an Airbnb and then brought together 10 people that didn't know each other and turned it into like a full experience for a couple of days. And then basically that had wrapped up, and I went home, and I just wasn't in a very good environment at home, to be frank, with my family, and people were pretty stressed with COVID. And I just didn't feel good being at home. And so I kind of knew I needed to get out and do something. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do? I don't have much money. I had like a couple $1,000. I was like, all right, well, I could buy a van, and that'd be fun. And then I can just travel around, and I can, instead of having Zoom chats, I can literally just rock up and experience all sorts of different kind of cultures and ways of life, like from very wealthy people to very poor people to very just across every different spectrum. And so I decided I was going to get a van. And then I think literally like the day after I decided I was going to get a van, I bought a van, and I didn't know anything about van life at that point. Like I didn't follow any Instagram pages. I didn't watch any YouTube pages or even traveling life in a caravan or something like that. Like I hadn't heard of or been exposed to any of that, but I was just like, all right, a van could be a cheap way to get out of my house, basically, because that's what I wanted to do at that point in time. And I saw this van on Gumtree. It was literally $2,000, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cheap. It was probably worth more like 5 or 6, I'd say, but the guy just wanted to get rid of it. And I knew that it was kind of good value, and that for parts alone, if it went to like a scrap metal thing, the guy would get 1.5K for it. So literally on the phone, I just called him up and told him I wanted to buy it without seeing it. And then I went there later that day, drove another car there, and I agreed to buy it. And it was just such a beautiful van. Like it had a wooden deck on top. So literally I was able to, so many times, like I learned ukulele, I would just sit on top of my van and play ukulele along the beach and say hi to random people. And I mean, it had everything I kind of needed and wanted. And it was called a Mitsubishi Star Wagon. That's the name of it. And my podcast, the background of the podcast art is a photo of the stars. So it was just so beautiful. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get this van. But I literally spent my kind of last bit of money on that. I was still working 2 days a week remote at that point, so I knew my income would build up to cover my living expenses. But that was a big commitment. And then I remember my first night in the van, I had no idea what to do, and it was still the middle of winter in Sydney. And I parked on a random street, and I parked on a little bit of a slope. And so, and I had I had one small blanket with me, and I woke up like freezing at 3 a.m. and mostly off my bed. I had no idea, but that was kind of my intro to van life, and I think that's great, because honestly, if I hadn't had circumstances which pushed me to leave home and jump and commit to something like that, I could have easily spent like 3 to 6 months just researching and looking into things and saving money. But I just kind of went for it and committed, and then figured it out down the track. And I think, like, for a lot of people that want to travel, I think that, at some point you just have to pull the plug and decide, all right, I'm going to go for it. And then deciding to go for it, and then hearing that the Queensland border was going to reopen, and then traveling all the way up to Cairns and then around, like, honestly, it's, I would say it's the best thing I've ever done in my entire life so far, just in terms of how it got me to grow and the people I met, and learning how little I needed to actually make me happy. Like, it's nuts. And it cost $2,000, like, obviously not everyone might want to do it the way I did it. And maybe it's a bit rougher than having a bigger van or having a caravan, but I mean, I had a kitchen at the back. I had power, The van's aircon like worked 50% of the time. I had everything. I had everything I needed, really. And with the wooden deck on top, it really made like a second living room where it created all this extra space where I'd spend a lot of time up there eating breakfast or just working. I had like a couple of camp chairs in the back, and I just put a camp chair on top and then put my laptop on my lap and then just work, at all sorts of different beaches or places all around. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the deck on top is probably your favorite of the van. Anything else that sort of stands out of the van that you really love?
I love how all the details are very well thought out. Like, it was designed by a Japanese couple that and as far as the story goes, because I didn't buy it from them, I bought it from the person that bought it from them. They were architects back in Japan. Wow. And so everything was thought of. So even a month or 2 months into the van, I'd find these small compartments in different places. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And all the cupboards were magnetic. Like, in terms of builds for a van as old and as small as my van, I haven't seen a build near as good. Like, magnetic cupboards, and the kitchen's really cool, and it pops up, and like they made a cupboard at the back of the van where when you open the cupboard, it kind of folds down into an extra seat. And they literally just thought of everything. So the roof's definitely my favorite, but I also love the kitchen setup. Really, really nice kitchen setup. And what else do I love? Well, I love the character of the van because it doesn't drive fast. Like, it drives slow, and I think like, not very slow, but definitely pretty slow. Right. And it kind of taught me to not be in a rush, because it was like the first mechanic that saw the van thought that I should just park it on the side of the road and live out of it there. He was like, yeah, don't drive this thing. But then I went to another mechanic, and he was like, oh yeah, like, it'll be fine to drive around Sydney. And then I took it halfway around Australia. Right. Wow. So the fact that it would even go, like, that was part of the fun. Because it would chow through the oil. And I mean, I never had any major issues, but like, when I got up to Cairns, I had to have the steering wheel at about 30 degrees to the left to drive straight, because something with the steering was going. So I got that fixed, and didn't cost too much to get fixed. But the van itself just made every drive an adventure. Like, if I took a new Mercedes Sprinter, or I had a 4x4 in a caravan, like, a lot of random stuff that happened wouldn't have happened because my van just made, some of the time I would choose the adventure. Other times my van would choose the adventure because something would go wrong with it, or it'd go slow. Yeah. But I even made friends with people who would also go really slow on the highway. Like, I remember one time, where was I? I think it might have been near Townsville or Mackay or something like that, where there was this other van. It was like an old Mitsubishi Express that was going ridiculously slow. And I was like, oh, I could probably go a little bit faster than this guy, but I'll just like hover behind him. Like, we'll have like a mini convoy for a little while. And then eventually he just went way too slow. And I pulled into a gas station. I passed him and pulled into a gas station. And he pulled into the same gas station. We chatted for like half an hour,
Oh, wow.
We had like very slow vans. So it's great.
That's a good lesson learned there. Go slow. Don't rush around Australia. Enjoy the scenery.
Yeah, well, because like, what are you just doing it to kind of tick it off, or like, I think
exactly.
Yeah, like, you take it. There's no point rushing it.
That's why we've never been keen on doing like a lap or anything. We are more thinking of going and then just like, you're not stopping. It's just full time. Go and you go see what you can. Like, not rush to get around or
go live in the land. Don't go just see the land. Just
and not like the touristy places. It's more just everything. You want to see everything, experience the culture, meet with people. That's the kind of thing that we do. So
yeah. Generally, like, whenever I rocked up in a place, the first thing I do would be talk to other people in vans, because I was stealth camping, and they'd be like, hey, don't park here, or you can, and then find out the ins and outs of that, and just make friends with other travelers, and then talk to locals and find out like cool spots to go and places to see. And like, I would never travel with like, all right, here's the top 5 things to do in this area. It's always just kind of see and chat to people and find out cool stuff. And some of the time you find it accidentally. Like, in Townsville, is it Townsville? I think in Townsville, there's this spot. I forget what it is, but it's this massive hill where you can look out all over Townsville and Magnetic Island. And I found it accidentally. Yeah, because I was just looking on Wikicamps for areas where I could fill up with water, and there was an area there, and I was like, oh, that looks like a cool park, and I ended up driving all the way up the hill. So some of the time, just driving to random places, or seeing it, like I had a couple of times where there was just a random turnoff that said waterfalls. I was like, all right, cool, just gonna follow this, see what happens, you know?
Yeah. So talking about favourite places, or
Destinations.
yeah, what's your most favourite spot that you've had along your journey, or in your case, the most favourite people that you've met along the way? Where were they from?
Yeah, I think some of my favorite people were in the more dense areas, just because I think you have a higher volume of people passing, so you're more likely to interact with people that are really friendly. So to tell a favorite people story and then a favorite place story. So there was this beach in the Gold Coast, or maybe half an hour south of the Gold Coast, just before the New South Wales border, that I met some, actually, even more favorite people. So when I first went to the Gold Coast, and I was kind of learning where to park and where to cook, I was kind of having a bit of fun with things. And they just started reopening bars and clubs. And so there was this massive bar and a massive line, probably 50 to 100 people waiting to get into it. And there was a car park right outside it that was like public. And so I literally parked in there, and then I cooked dinner in the car park right in front of all the people in line to get into the club or pub or whatever it was for the fun of it. And then this other van pulled in right next to me, and like very kind of hippie vibe. And one of the guys in there had a unicycle. And so I said to him, hey, you want a unicycle on top of my deck? So then he climbed on top of my van and then unicycled on top of my deck in front of all the people at the club. And that was hilarious. And I became good friends with that group of people, and they told me about a few other kind of good spots around the Gold Coast, a little bit off the beaten path. And yeah, I ended up parking at this beach. I think it was called like Tugum or something like that. Anyway, I was just kind of chilling out, having a low-key day at the beach and playing my ukulele. And then this old guy walked up to me, and he had like a beautiful hat. And I was like, all right, let's have a chat with him. He was asking me about my van, and really cool guy. He's like traveled full time for like 20 or 30 years or something like that, just out of a tiny backpack. I was amazed. And so I asked him if he wanted a cup of tea. I made him a cup of tea. And then I just did the kind of tradition, which is invite him onto the roof of my van. And because I had two camping chairs. And so we just sat on the roof of my van and chatted for an hour and interacted with all sorts of random people along the way. And then I became good friends with him. And then I bumped into him again somewhere else. And we've kept an email contact. Sometimes he'll like write an email to me, just updating me on his travels. So that was really cool.
Sounds like the rooftop is like a penthouse, you know?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's something different. Yeah, it gets people's attention, you know? It's something different. And then favorite places, honestly, I really loved Lake Proserpine, which is like a beautiful free campsite. It's about 45 minutes west of Airlie Beach, and there's hot showers and everything. But it's just a beautiful place. Like you're parked right by this lake, and there's no phone signal, and people have campfires, and I think there was not too many other vehicles when I went there. And I came back there, and I just loved the dynamic and the atmosphere, and lots of families or lots of groups where people would bring a whole bunch of vehicles and park up and make a circle and yeah, so I just love that spot.
Wow.
There were even like wild cows and like cows in the water. And when I woke up one morning, there were some geese just chasing a few people. So for me, like my favorite thing about travel was definitely the people. And then you get to see people and have fun experiences, but do it like with a beautiful scenic background of like beaches or lakes or hikes. So it's so cool. But yeah. I think the cool thing about traveling is like you can work out what experience you want to have and then design for that. So for me, a wooden deck happened to work out really well on top of the van because it was all about meeting new people and having new experiences. And so that worked out really well. But if you wanted something more private, then, you know, you don't have a deck on top of on top of the van, and maybe you want a bit more space. So you go for a bus, or you want to be able to, you know, 4x4 to different places. So you have a caravan and a 4x4. And that's the cool thing about travel. Like for some people, they just want to get out and be by themselves. And so you can kind of design for whatever you want. But also you can kind of alter the experiences you're having even during your trip. Like you can decide, all right, I've had enough of being by the beach. I want to go inland 5 hours. And so just the flexibility to kind of work out what sort of experiences you want to have and then design for them is just amazing. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's why I love what we're doing with our podcast is we're showing not only are we meeting random strangers and learning about their travels and they're hearing their stories, but we're also then, because it's a podcast, we're sharing that to other people, and it just shows the different dynamics of every walk of life, every different caravan
Everyone has
story.
a different travel experience.
But they're all doing it, in their own special way.
Yeah. It's more for the love of the traveling and experiences than anything else.
Yeah, it's not a holiday.
Yeah. No, and I think a lot of people see like van life or caravan life on Instagram and think like, oh, it needs to cost a lot of money and it just needs to be this big ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
But most of the people that I met traveling were like didn't have heaps and heaps of money. Like they were either just comfortable or scraping by, and just because of how much they valued traveling, they just chose to live it as a way of life. But you see less, like I think it's so easy to glamorize it when it's not always easy. Like depending on your setup and needing to find access to water and bathrooms and showers and cook, and it can be really draining and fatiguing, but it's kind of a way of life. And if you want to do it, you can do it. Like it doesn't need to cost that much, and there's ways to make it work.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about Hello Stranger, and you're looking at taking that a bit further, going out of Australia and a bit of worldwide, or doing a bit of world traveling, or?
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, like I want to do more video content. So for a while I did, I was just doing podcasts where I kind of connected with someone and then had a conversation with them. But I would love to document experiences a bit more of like meeting a cool person and then going on a hike with them, and having that as a video. So you have the conversation, but also the experience.
Yes.
So yeah, I definitely want to do a lot more of that. I want to, I don't know if I'll do it with my current van or not, or another van, but I want to paint a van with chalkboard paint. That way people can write on it in chalk and use that as a way to kind of make all sorts of cool experiences happen. So yeah, there's a lot more I want to do. Like I really feel like I've kind of found something that reflects the direction I want to take the rest of my life in. And so, I mean, who knows? I've thought about getting a van and doing Canada because I'm from there, and I feel like that would be fun. I also want to hitchhike across the US at some point. And I want to do more hitchhiking, and definitely not now because of COVID and also kind of the political situation being tense. Yeah, no, really bad timing for that. But yeah, like I love putting myself in scenarios where I'm experiencing different ways of life, and I love connecting random people. Like there were so many moments along my trip where I bumped into like at least 2 separate people that I'd previously met along the way that just happened to be together and then went to a place, or, and it just kind of becomes cumulative and builds up. And I feel like for me, just living life from that community-based way of living was so much more fun and so much more fulfilling. So yeah, I want to keep doing that. And maybe do some more video type content of just like walking up to people and saying hi and just seeing where it goes, because you never know what experiences you're gonna have. And all the way from like I went paragliding with some random dude that I met at a campsite that had just got his tandem paragliding license, all the way through to like going to a party in Cairns through some girl that runs a co-working space that I'd met in the Gold Coast, and she happened to DM me on Instagram, and then I slept like on a boat right by the Great Barrier Reef for a night, so all like the experiences were very vast and very wide. But yeah, I love it. I absolutely love, it's kind of like I'm approaching chance and random events, but approaching them in a slightly tailored way to kind of make certain things happen.
So out of your experiences, what sort of special tips or tricks can you share to the listeners?
Yeah, I think I think definitely a main one would just be going up and talking to people, like whether that's locals in a place you're in or whether that's other travelers. People, in my experience, are a lot friendlier and a lot more willing to help than you might perceive. And the amount of times people were just really friendly with me or just offered me a place to stay, or the amount of times like an elderly couple would just like, I would ask if there was drinking water at a side and they were like, no, but they would just go and give me some of their water. Like people are very friendly. And I think if it's travelers or just people that aren't even traveling, just starting off being that little bit more friendly and open-minded and saying hi to people or just opening yourself up to those sort of experiences is great. So that would be the main one for sure. Some other ones, I definitely feel like experimenting with different ways of traveling is great. Like I'd always pictured myself as a hostel type person where I'd rent a car, go around to different hostels or take a bus. I'd never thought about the idea of being in a van, and then it just kind of happened. And now I'm like, oh man, I'd much prefer this to hostels because I don't have to, party every night. Like I can sleep when I want to and meet people when I want to. So experimenting with, I think it'd be cool to like rent a bigger vehicle at some point and then try having a 4x4 with a tent on top. And so just exposing yourself to different mediums and modalities of travel, because I think it's really hard to predict what they're going to be like until you actually immerse yourself in them. So if you want to buy a van, you don't have to kind of fully jump off the fence like I did, unless you're in a kind of situation where you really want to. You could just rent one for a week and then make a decision from there. And what else? I don't know. Like I agree with what we were talking about earlier about not rushing it and about kind of working out what is it about travel that you enjoy? Like, is it going to, I don't know, different beaches and surfing? Is it going inland on hikes, or is it meeting people and really kind of taking the time to work out what experiences you want to have out of travel instead of just doing it because it's a thing that people should do.
Yeah.
And one more.
Sure.
If I can second, is using social media. Like, I think social media can be a massive distraction, and I've definitely been addicted to it. But I think it's also really beautiful because I would add most people that I met on Instagram, and then they would see my Instagram story in another place and be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm here," or "Oh, do you know of my friend in this place?" So by putting Instagram stories up occasionally and then just DMing people, and it kind of, my travel slowly started to snowball where by the time, like I started off in Sydney, by the time I got to Cairns, most places I would go to, like a beach or something, I would bump into someone. And it just, like, I started to know like most of the, probably not most, but such a substantial portion of people traveling that it just, the potential to have cool experiences just kind of snowballed. And so, yeah, just by adding people you meet on social platforms, I think that's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's why we, Traveling Friends of Australia, this podcast, we wanted to share people's stories and obviously connect people that are traveling so they know that they're not alone out there, and, they can add each other on social media because we ask about the social profiles.
Totally.
So they can watch each other's journeys and, hopefully catch up around the place and, hang out with.
That's the best thing when you bump into someone you met online or another traveler that you've been following. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back to when I saw your profile. There's one story that really caught my eye. If we can just go back to one last story, is the one where the fire was on the boat. You spoke about that on your Instagram, obviously. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how that affected you in the moment?
Yeah, so that was actually at like Proserpine. I was debating kind of bringing it up when I was speaking about that like beforehand, but I think that would have been the second time. Yeah, the second time I went to that lake, and I bumped into a bunch of people I had met in the Gold Coast or thereabouts in Early Beach, and so I took them all. I said, "Hey, come to this great campsite at Lake Proserpine." Took them all there for the night, and they left early in the morning because they were doing some scenic, fly across the Great Barrier Reef adventure. And I woke up and I was having breakfast. I think I was actually on the deck of my van looking out kind of over the lake and drinking some coffee. And then I just heard a loud noise and I looked over and I saw a boat on fire, and another kind of part of the boat, like maybe 10, 15 meters away, also just in flames. And I was like, what the heck? And basically a bunch of people would kind of take boats down and just go on them or go water skiing or do whatever they wanted to do. And I guess I have some training in emergency services, but also since I was younger, I've always just loved like emergencies and just kind of getting to react quickly. And so I kind of was like, all right, I need to get to the people. Like I didn't know how I was going to help them, but I didn't kind of have a like, oh, I need to think about this for a little while. I was just like, all right, quickly move in the direction. So I just jumped off the top of my van and then I just started running towards the water. And then by the time I got to the water, there was a guy that had a boat like that was kind of moored right by the water's edge. And he jumped in the boat. And so I just jumped in with him as he'd started the boat. And then we just drive out to people. It was like a scene of a movie. And I had like so much adrenaline going at that point. And I was like, shoot, I'm literally in a boat driving out towards like another burning boat with like people right by it. It's like, oh, but I didn't really have too much of a chance to think about my safety or I didn't even, to be honest, think about what I was going to do. But then we pulled out to right where the people were and I just started taking my clothes off at that point because I was like, all right, I'm going to jump in the water. I don't want to be wearing all these clothes. And so we got to where the people were. And then the guy driving the boat was like, all right, mate, like best of luck. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like then it kind of dawned on me, like he's staying in the boat and I'm going to jump in the water. And I was like, well, fair enough because it's his boat. So I just jumped in the water and the people kind of pounced on me when I got in the water because they were in the water. They'd been flung off the boat. And so they kind of just grabbed me. And so I kind of just, I don't know, I didn't really calm them down, but I tried to like, hey, it's going to be okay. And then we passed up like a baby first up onto the boat and then the guy grabbed it. And then just helped basically, I think there were like 3 or 4 people in the water in total. I just helped lift them up onto the boat. And and then we all got on the boat and some of them were really badly burnt. Like it was horrible. And then we drove to like a kind of boat dock nearby. And then someone else had gone to find phone signal because there was no phone signal at the campsite to call 000. And then I kind of just sat with the people for a while and just made jokes. So you kind of try to change the topic to take their mind off things and give them some sugary drinks because of all the stress. And then it was probably like a good half hour before the vehicles arrived. Like and there were heaps, like 3 or 4 cop cars, a couple of ambulances, 2 fire trucks, SES came, like everything just came because they didn't know how bad it was going to be. That was a pretty shocking experience. So then eventually everyone was kind of all looked after. Everyone went to the hospital, and then someone gave me a boat ride back to like where I was parked. So then I hopped off the boat, and there's a couple traveling in a 4x4 that were parked next to my van. So then I just said good morning to them and spoke to them for half an hour. And I was like, you have no idea what my morning's just been like. And I kind of became good friends with them as I did. Yeah. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was a pretty intense experience for me. Like I think I just kind of snapped into like, all right, let's go and help these people. But the boat actually exploded a second time shortly after we left it with the people on board. And I was like, wow, that could have been really bad. Like the people could have been like, they end up in hospital. Someone had, I think like 2nd or 3rd degree burns, one of the kids, but no one died or broke any bones. And I was like, wow, that could have been so much worse. So I was grateful that they were okay. And I was grateful that that I was okay because I was like, shoot, the boat exploded a second time. Like that's crazy. It literally felt like a scene out of a movie. And then I kind of just like sat with it. Like the rest of that day, I was kind of in shock. I was like, what just happened? Like I've never been through anything like this before. So I wanted to post about it as a way to kind of express how I felt. But it was crazy to see how many people just like without much time to think, just came and helped everybody, and people brought food, and some people looked after different kids and drove people places. And for me, I think especially in contrast to the kind of reality that I'd been seeing on the news of like people fighting over toilet paper and all that kind of thing, just seeing how friendly people were and how keen people were to help. Like that was just such an important narrative that I felt needed to be out there more.
And all strangers.
and all strangers, and people are just helping each other out, like risking their lives, like no question, just because we're human. And it's like, yeah, like that kind of thing is happening over the world over and over and over again. But you don't hear too much about
At
it.
the end of the day, no matter who we turn out to be, I think those instincts are always there in us, and it'll come out when we're pressured to take action on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think like human beings are by default like kind and want to help, and I think there's a tendency to view the fact that we've survived this long because we're very selfish, but I think it's actually, and I've kind of read stuff about, because we're so collaborative and help each other. And yeah, I think for me, like going from someone that was very shy and living his own life and just trying to make it, to someone that cares less about making it and just loves people and talking to people and building community, like it's just changed so much of how I live. And it's just such a beautiful thing for people to do. And especially in terms of travel, it just opens you up to all sorts of experiences, whether it's just incredible conversations or trying new foods or trying paragliding or ending up sleeping on a boat or like whatever it is.
People don't even get to experience those kind of things, and like you did it just by meeting people, not you actually going out to go and do those kind of experiences, like, and that's what the beauty is of it.
yeah.
Yeah. So literally, like I think if people just go out and say hello, and don't say hello with like, oh, I'm just going to say hello, but kind of lean into it, expecting something cool to happen, and be excited to talk to people, then you never know what's going to happen. And yeah, I mean, you have to be careful, obviously. Like, you don't want to end up in unsafe situations, but for the most part, like it's great.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we can talk to you for hours.
Yeah. I think we share a lot of similar views and values, which is always good.
Yeah, definitely. Love it. So lastly, we're going to ask you to share your socials so that people can find you and follow your story.
Yeah, sure. So my Instagram is Andy Riis. So that's ANDY RIIS. So R, two I's and an S. It's a weird last name. And yeah, that's on Instagram. And then I guess you can kind of basically find me from everywhere else from there.
And awesome. You've got your podcast page as well, hey?
Yeah.
Hello Stranger.
Yeah, if you just, like at Hello Stranger Podcast, or just hellostranger.fm is the website, which has more information on that as well. Yeah.
Epic.
Awesome. I hate saying goodbye. It's the worst part. We always need to end it. And
No, it's cool. Stay connected from here.
Hopefully you'll come to WA and we'll still be here.
Yeah.
Or we'll see you along the way somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll definitely meet
up.
Right. Keep in touch. And
well, thanks so much for this conversation. It's great connecting. And look forward to seeing what comes out of your podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy.
All right. Yeah. See you later.
Have a good day.
Bye.